Over this country's long history, Americans have often hesitated to support foreign wars and international machinations. Washington's farewell address warning against entangling alliances cast a long shadow. But from the nation's beginnings, Americans have usually known whom to root for, those who sought freedom, and whom to condemn, those who tried to crush liberty. Across the United States, you will find statues honoring people like the 18th century Polish patriot Tadeusz Kościuszko and the 19th century Hungarian freedom fighter Lajos Kossuth, who sought liberation for their people from the Russian and the Habsburg empires, and who found enthusiastic support in an America that was still then a young and weak nation. When Germany invaded Belgium in 1914, even though it initially stayed out of the war, America organized what was then the largest food aid effort in history to help the victim of aggression. During the Cold War, though it could not help militarily, Washington refused to recognize the Soviet annexation of the three Baltic republics, who are now proud and independent nations. America as a superpower sometimes acted unwisely in places like Vietnam and Iraq and Afghanistan. But even in those cases, it saw its involvement as the protection of freedom and democracy. Not anymore. The strangest aspect of the last few weeks of American diplomacy that culminated in the disaster at the White House on Friday is that the President of the United States has seemed utterly unwilling to say plainly that he supports the victim of aggression against the aggressor, and that he admires Ukrainian democracy more than Russian dictatorship. Instead, he and Vice President Vance spent Friday's photo op at the White House publicly scolding Ukraine's President Zelensky, telling him to say thank you, which he has said repeatedly, and accusing him of being disrespectful. Zelensky's fault was simply to point out that Ukraine had in fact signed a ceasefire deal with Putin in 2015 in Minsk, but that Putin had continually violated it ever since then. Trump used the occasion to remind all that he felt a special bond with Vladimir Putin. Zelensky did not handle himself well. He got emotional, responded too often, and took the bait that Vice President Vance laid for him. He should have studied how President Macron and Prime Minister Starmer handled Trump. Constant flattery and deference. Churchill said of his relationship with his American counterpart, "No lover ever studied every whim of his mistress as I did those of Franklin Roosevelt." But he's a man leading a nation at war that has lost tens of thousands of people. He is fighting for his very survival. And he and his nation are fighting for the values of freedom and democracy that America has supported since its founding, against a rapacious dictatorship in this case that actively seeks to undermine the United States, its interests, and its allies at every turn. It shouldn't be hard to figure out where your sympathies lie. Friday's turn of events took place after weeks of diplomacy in which the Trump administration has bullied its neighbors, asked Canada to cease to exist as a country, pressured Denmark to sell Greenland, and Panama to hand over the Panama Canal. It has threatened to impose higher tariffs on its allies than its foes, and it has shuttered almost all the food and medicine programs that it promised to the poorest people in the world. The conservative former British cabinet minister Rory Stewart asked in sorrow, was it for this that the US spent 80 years building power and alliances? Not to be a force for good, but instead to impoverish neighbors, threaten those it protected, rob minerals from war-torn countries, and break its promises to hundreds of millions of the poorest in the world? President Trump is not just changing American foreign policy. He is reorienting America's moral compass, a compass that has been firmly set since the country's founding almost 250 years ago. Go to CNN.com/Fareed for a link to my Washington Post column.